Hi everyone, I'm back with another Season 9 PTR video and I want to show you the new Nightmare Dungeon escalation system. So Nightmare Dungeons have gotten a revamp in this patch and there is now this chain of dungeons that you can complete that is a bit different from like the typical Nightmare Dungeon farming experience. So this is what you see here in action right now. So there are new special sigils called Escalation sigils. They look kind of the same as the others, but they have their own little icon that is separate from the normal Nightmare Dungeon sigils, but those still exist. And you actually have to farm normal Nightmare Dungeons to then find an Escalation sigil. Once you go in there, it's like a normal Nightmare Dungeon, but it goes more and more intense as you go through levels. There's 4 levels in total, with 1, 2, and 3 being normal Nightmare Dungeons, but with more and more affixes. And then the 4th level is the Astaroth boss fight, where you get a ton of rewards at the end. So here you see an example. This is a tier 1 escalation sigil. This is the first run in that series of 3 or 4 dungeons. And then after you complete it, you get this pillar here and you can click it and it will start the next dungeon. It doesn't actually tell you which dungeon exactly, and it tells you the new affixes. Now what's interesting about this is that the affixes are actually completely randomized each time. So it's not like you start with like this one positive and this one negative, and then those stay and you go to tier 2 and then you have another one and another one on both sides. But instead you get, well, more affixes. There's, for example, 2 positive and 2 negative here, but they are different from the previous dungeon. So it's not actually really escalating in the sense that you have, you know, a certain really good sigil and then it becomes more and more intense, but it's always RNG. I don't really like that part of the system. I feel like it would be cool if we like get a Nightmare Dungeon escalation sigil and then it actually, you know, has the same stuff that you're looking for and it gets more and more crazy basically. But for now, this is what it is. Now the thing is that it doesn't actually really scale up the difficulty. So this remains like a typical, like let's say Torment 4 content. So the monsters are not really getting stronger or harder or anything like that, outside of getting a few more affixes, which mostly mean nothing, to be honest. Once you are strong enough to do Torment 4 content, then, you know, adding like plus 20% damage on a Nightmare Dungeon sigil or adding like plus 20% HP or like some random elite affix doesn't really matter, I guess, because it's going to be blasting through them anyway. So I gotta say, it doesn't even feel much like an escalation that really describes the word properly. And it's more like, okay, you get more stuff as you go through those series of dungeons. That being said though, there are actually a ton of really good rewards that I have added here. So you see this, for example, there's more optosite drops, and there's also a bunch of other affixes that give you, like, for example, gem fragments and obols. There's like obol affix where you can get like 1,000 obols in like a single dungeon. So you can go through a dungeon if you're really fast in like a minute or something. You click a bunch of these chests, every time it pops out 100 obols. So that's actually really rewarding. And also the Astaroth fight is actually really rewarding. So this is like the tier 4 of the escalation. It's just the boss layer. You just walk in there, fight the boss, which is relatively easy. I think it's easier than some of the other like layer bosses, for example, but I wasn't really so sure this hider build was really powerful. I just kind of blasted down everything of that. But you see an example here of the loot. There's 3,200 optosite, there is 580 veil crystals, 1,200 iron chunks, yeah, like 20 million gold or something, a bunch of ancestrals. So the loot is actually looking pretty good here. And if you're going really fast, then I think this could be worth it. You can probably do like an entire series of like an escalation sigil in, you know, sub 5 minutes or so on a really fast build. Maybe even less than that. And well, look at this optosite, for example. This is definitely competitive with like Undercity, like tribute runs, for example, when it comes to optosite. It's definitely better than pretty much anything out there when it comes to like veil crystals and chunks and so on. I think even boss farming can't really keep up with that. So it is actually pretty good, and the gold is also very nice. On top of this, you can find these Horadric strongrooms. This is also something that I have previewed. So this looks like this here. There is like this Horadric gateway. It also has like a minimap icon. You can't miss that thing. It's effectively a bit like a cursed shrine event. You click it and there's a bunch of monsters spawning, which right now doesn't have a timer, so I'm not sure exactly, maybe half a minute or so. There's like a bunch of stuff appearing, you blast it down and you go into the portal, and then you are in the side dungeon basically. So I'm gonna show what this looks like. You go in there, and then there is like this little altar where again you have to do like a bit of like a wave survival thing. You have to like fill up this ritual basically with a bunch of monsters. And then you get 3 out of 5 choices you can do in order to customize the follow-up strong room run. So it gives you, for example, like more rewards, or it like starts spawning new monsters and new shrines that give you a bit more like special stuff. But overall, the good thing about this is that you get a lot of stuff, and it inherits the affixes from the like, you know, parent Nightmare dungeon basically. So even though this is like a kind of side dungeon here, it has all the same stuff. So if you have, let's say, extra gem fragment chest rewards or extra obol chest rewards or something like that, this will also be present here in the strong room. And there's a lot of that. So you actually get a lot of rewards if you do those strong rooms. And on a fast build, you can clear them in a minute, maybe 2. And there's actually a timer of maximum 2 minutes anyway, but it's not that hard to fully clear everything until you have like the full reward basically. So once you select 3 rewards, the door opens and you have 2 minutes once you enter. And it's basically just like one large room, and you see like these little shrines here. They did talk about that it's a little bit like the gauntlet, and yeah, I guess there is a bit of like a similarity with like the score going up here. You see this Horadric attunement, that is effectively the reward score, similar to Infernal Hordes, where you just get more Edda, you get more stuff. It's similar here. I don't really know exactly how it scales. I got to like 4,000 or so on these runs after clearing like the entire room. Maybe with like a good combo of effects from those shrines at the start, you maybe get even more than that. But it also seems relatively rewarding if you go through this pretty fast. At the end of the 2-minute timer, there's like a boss popping out, you blast him down. Right now, this is always Blood Bishop, at least from my 4 runs or so that I've done. It's always the same boss. I think this might just be placeholder because I don't really see why it's just that one. But again, overall, this is relatively easy because it's Torment 4 content. So as soon as you have a build that can blast to Torment 4, you're not going to have trouble with this. And then here's like an example of the rewards as well, when you have like a few thousand of this Horadric attunement. So the chest is not as good as the Astaroth fight, for example, but it does pop out a bunch of like, especially the season stuff, these Horadric vials. You need those to boost your seasonal powers, for example, a bunch of loot. And well, more importantly, in this room, as I mentioned, if you have good Nightmare Dungeon affixes like extra obols, extra gem fragments, extra gear chests, and so on, they all appear in this room as well. So this is like the real reward here. I'm not sure if like long term this will be really worth it to go through those strong rooms every single time. Maybe just to get more sigils, get more powder and so on, because I think sometimes you can also get these escalation sigils here, and this will actually then start this chain of dungeons that I showed you at the start. And this is, for example, what the tier 3 dungeon looks like when you have already done 2 in the chain of dungeons. So here now you have 3 positive and 3 negative affixes, and well, as I said, the positive rewards are actually really good. The thing is just we can't really customize it, and it gets randomized after every single run. So there's not really much of player agency, for example, which is, I think, a problem. I think it would be better if, like, at the very least, like the affixes that are already present, once you roll a good sigil, are staying throughout all of the dungeons in that chain, for example. So if you start with, like, you know, the right thing that you care about, let's say you really want to gamble items and you want to go for the obols, or you really want to farm gem fragments, you want to go for the gem fragment chest, and then you get like 3 dungeons in a row, and maybe Astaroth also gets like an extra reward of that type, for example. I think that would make a lot more sense, and that would give us, you know, more target farming, which I think is something that we actually need and would really be benefiting from in D4 right now. As it is, it's just kind of like we can't really choose anything, and it's not like you are like just ending the run midway through. Like, you're not gonna go through like tier 2 and then just stop. You're just gonna go through all 3 dungeons, kill the boss at the end, and that's it. Because once you're already in, like, you know, 1 or 2 runs, well, you're gonna finish them basically. But with all that being said, I do expect Nightmare Dungeons to definitely be pretty far up there when it comes to like the farming content next season. It seems very rewarding. It's a good alternative for Obol farm. It's very good for gearing up and just generally getting a lot of stuff. It seems like they have done a really big buff here for Nightmare Dungeons. One problem that remains is that the XP is relatively low. Nothing compares to the pit, and there is not really much of that in the Nightmare Dungeons outside of like the leveling experience, I think. But we'll see. There has to be some more testing. There is some new XP affix, which is actually pretty cracked when it comes to 1 to 60 leveling in Nightmare Dungeons. So if you get a few dungeons like that, you want to run those because that seems really fast, and we will probably see some crazy times, especially from groups that have access to 4 times the amount of sigils as a solo player. So you have 4 times more chances to get those XP sigils. So that could be pretty nuts. And maybe this will actually carry forward into Paragon farming as well and be an alternative to the pit. But right now I'm not that sure about it. And that's also pretty much it for this entire system. So for now, it's like definitely an upgrade to the player farming experience and like the material farming especially. They also recently lowered the masterworking cost pretty substantially. So 1 to 4 is now costing a lot less materials, and together with the amount of resets that you have to do to masterwork your stuff to perfection, this actually reduces the overall cost a lot from the recent patch in Season 8 already. Plus, we're going to get a lot more materials in general from those new Nightmare dungeons, so I think we can definitely look forward to a lot more and a lot easier masterworking in the future, because this is really what the Nightmare dungeons will be for in like Season 9, I think. Personally, I do hope that this is only really the first step in this whole like new endgame system that we're hopefully gonna see. So we have the Nightmare dungeon stuff now, and for example in Season 10, Infernal Horse is getting a rework, and then who knows what else after that. And I expect like Season 12 also will be the new expansion. And one thing that I've been, telling Blizzard and telling in my feedback videos and all that stuff all the time is that we need some real meta progression, something on the of the likes of like the Weaver tree in last Epoch, or like the Atlas Passer tree in Path of Exile. If you get some system like that to actually customize each individual system to our liking, juice it up, make it harder, make it more rewarding, and these kind of things, similar to what we get here, but with more player agency, I think that could be pretty cool for the future. So maybe this is kind of like the first step in that whole process, and we're gonna see a lot more in the next few seasons. But for now, this is what I got here. So let me know your thoughts, and I guess it is a quite nice upgrade to Nightmare Dungeons, which I guess most people have not really been doing much lately. This is also just about it. It's not really a crazy overarching new solution for endgame content, unfortunately. So hope you enjoyed my summary, and I'll see you guys next time.